The distress signal traveled across the void for 3 standard cycles before reaching the communication array on Kepler Station. Ambassador Zillith of the Vortani Republic pressed her 6-fingered hands against the transmission console, her normally pale blue skin taking on a sickly gray hue as she reviewed the message for the 7th time. "They're asking for military assistance," she whispered to her aide, Corvin, who stood nervously behind her. "The Hectari Collective has invaded their outer colonies. They need warriors." Corvin's tentacles writhed with anxiety. "Ambassador, surely we cannot get involved in another species conflict. The Council of Peaceful Worlds has strict protocols about—" "Look at the casualties," Zillith interrupted, pointing to the data streaming across the holographic display. 17 million Nexari civilians dead in the first wave alone, their entire defensive fleet destroyed. This isn't just some territorial dispute, Corvin. This is genocide. The message had come from the Nexari Federation, a small collection of peaceful trading worlds located in the outer spiral. They were known throughout the galaxy for their exceptional skill in biotechnology and medicine, having provided cures for dozens of plagues that had ravaged other civilizations. They were healers, not fighters, which made them easy targets for the war-hungry Hectari. Zillith read the plea again, her voice catching slightly. "To any civilization capable of military intervention, we beg for your assistance. Our people are dying. Our children hide in shelters that grow smaller each day. We have no weapons, no soldiers. No hope except for the kindness of others. We offer everything we have in exchange for protection. Please, someone, anyone, help us." "We have to do something," she said, her resolve hardening. "I know the Council won't approve direct military action. We're negotiators, not warriors. But maybe we can find someone who is." Corvin's eyes widened. "You're not suggesting we contact one of the warrior species, are you? The Korthax would demand territory as payment. The Brutari would probably enslave the survivors. And the Vashti—" he shuddered. "The Vashti would eat them." Zillith was already accessing the galactic database, scrolling through potential allies. Most of the warrior species were either allied with the Hectari, too expensive to hire, or almost as dangerous as the invaders themselves. She needed someone with military strength, but also moral principles. Someone who would fight to protect the innocent rather than for conquest or profit. "Wait," she said, pausing at an entry that seemed oddly out of place in the warrior species section. "What about these humans?" Corvin leaned over her shoulder, reading the data. "I've never heard of them. Let me cross-reference—" "Oh my. Ambassador, these creatures are from a Class 12 death world." "A what?" "Death world, the most dangerous planetary classification in the galactic catalog. Look at this." He manipulated the display, bringing up an image of a blue and green planet. 71% of the surface is covered in corrosive liquid. The atmosphere contains toxic oxygen gas. The gravity is nearly twice galactic standard, and the weather— He paused, scanning the data. "Ambassador, this planet regularly experiences violent storms that can level cities, seismic events that split continents, and temperature variations that would kill most known species." Zillith stared at the information in disbelief. "And these humans evolved there? How are they not extinct?" "According to this, they're not just surviving, they're thriving. Population of over 8 billion. They've completely colonized their death world and have spread to multiple star systems. But, Ambassador, look at their history." The hologram shifted, displaying centuries of human conflict, wars that spanned continents, weapons that could destroy entire cities, conflicts that claimed millions of lives. "They fight constantly," Corvin said, his voice filled with horror. "They've been at war with each other for their entire recorded history. Some conflicts lasted over a century. They've developed weapons that could sterilize entire worlds. Ambassador, these aren't warriors. These are monsters." But Zillith was reading deeper into the files, and what she found gave her pause. Wait, look at this. For every war, there are records of humans helping other humans. They have organizations dedicated to healing the sick, feeding the hungry, protecting the innocent. Even during their worst conflicts, they maintained hospitals, schools, orphanages. She pulled up more recent data. And here, they've made contact with 47 different species in the last century. Not one instance of unprovoked aggression. They've established trade agreements, cultural exchanges, even military alliances. But in every case, they were defending others or defending themselves. Corvin remained skeptical. That could just mean they're good at hiding their true nature. Deathworlders are known for their deception. Or, Zillith said thoughtfully, it means they understand the difference between necessary violence and senseless cruelty. Look at their military doctrine. She highlighted several passages in their database entry. They call it proportional response and protection of non-combatants. They have rules about warfare, Corvin, rules they follow even when fighting for their lives. She made her decision. I'm going to contact them. Ambassador, please reconsider. Even if they're not hostile to us, do we really want to introduce such violent beings to the Nexari? What if they decide the Nexari worlds would make nice colonies? Zillith turned to face her aide directly. The Nexari are dying, Corvin. Right now, as we debate this, Hectari ships are glassing their cities and enslaving their children. We can't help them ourselves, and every other option leads to a different kind of destruction. These humans might be dangerous, but they're the only ones who seem to fight for something other than conquest. She turned back to the console and began composing a message. Besides, look at their response time to distress calls. According to Galactic records, they've responded to 17 emergency situations in the past 50 years. Pirates threatening trade routes, natural disasters on non-human worlds, even rescue operations in hostile space. And in every case, they asked for nothing in return except fuel and supplies. The message took shape on the screen. To the Human Federation, we have received a distress call from the Nexari Federation requesting military assistance against an invasion by the Hectari Collective. As members of the Council of Peaceful Worlds, we are unable to provide direct military aid but believe intervention is morally necessary to prevent genocide. We are forwarding the Nexari plea to you in hopes that you might be willing and able to provide assistance. The Nexari are a peaceful people skilled in medicine and biotechnology. They have never engaged in aggressive warfare and pose no threat to any civilized species. Time is critical. Please respond if you are able to help. She attached the original Nexari distress call and the tactical data about Hectari forces, then hesitated with her finger over the transmission key. Are you certain about this, Ambassador? Corvin asked quietly. Zillith thought about the Nexari children hiding in shelters, about the millions already dead, about the medical advances that would be lost if their civilization fell. No, she said finally. But I'm certain about what happens if we do nothing. She pressed the key. The message shot out through subspace, racing toward the Human Federation's capital world at faster-than-light speeds. It would take 18 standard hours to reach Earth, and hopefully not much longer for a response. What Zillith didn't know was that the message was intercepted by a forward patrol vessel of the 3rd Human Fleet, currently conducting training exercises near the Galactic Rim. Captain Sarah Chen was reviewing supply reports when her communications officer called out. Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission from... I'm not sure how to pronounce this. The Vortani Republic? On screen, Chen said, setting aside her reports. As she read the message, her expression grew increasingly grim. By the time she finished, her jaw was set in a hard line that her crew had learned to recognize. How long to reach the Nexari system at maximum burn? She asked her navigation officer. 48 hours, Captain, but that would drain our fuel reserves and stress the engines. Chen was already activating her command console. Do it, and transmit a fleet-wide alert. All ships are to rendezvous at our current position within 6 hours. Full combat load. She paused, then added, and send a message back to Fleet Command. Tell them we're responding to a humanitarian crisis and may need reinforcements. What should we tell the Vortani who sent the message? The communications officer asked. Chen's smile was predatory. Tell them the cavalry is coming. Across the fleet, similar scenes were playing out. Admiral Marcus Webb aboard the flagship UFS Indomitable read the forwarded message and immediately ordered his task force to change course. Commander Lisa Park of the Destroyer Squadron began calculating attack vectors. Colonel James Mitchell started preparing his Marine battalions for potential ground operations. None of them questioned the decision to respond. In the Human Federation military, there was an unwritten rule that had been passed down through generations. When innocents call for help, you answer. It didn't matter if they were human or alien, friend or stranger. It was simply what humans did. Back on Kepler Station, Zillith received the human response 8 hours later. It was brief. Message received. Third Fleet responding. ETA 44 hours. Tell the Nexari to hold on. Help is coming. She stared at the message in amazement. No demands for payment, no requests for territorial concessions or trade agreements, no questions about what they might gain from the intervention, just a promise to help. Corvin, she called to her aide, who was reviewing diplomatic protocols at another console. The humans are responding. They'll reach the Nexari system in less than 2 days. Corvin looked up, his expression troubled. That's unusually fast. How many ships are they sending? Zillith checked the tactical data attached to the human response. Her eyes widened. According to this, they're deploying an entire fleet, 12 heavy cruisers, 18 destroyers, 6 assault carriers, and support vessels, over 40 ships total. For a species they've never met, Corvin said quietly, to fight an enemy that poses no threat to them, at considerable expense and risk to themselves. He was silent for a moment, processing the implications. Ambassador, what have we done? The Hektari Collective had been systematically destroying the Nexari colonies for 6 standard cycles, and General Vrock was growing impatient. His massive form filled the command throne aboard the dreadnought Blood of Conquest, his 4 arms manipulating holographic displays that showed the progress of the invasion. Why are these herbivores taking so long to surrender? He growled to his subordinate, Commander Thex. The Hektari were a proud warrior race, standing nearly 3 meters tall with heavily armored exoskeletons and natural weapons that had evolved for combat. They had conquered 17 systems in the past decade, and never had they encountered such stubborn resistance from such a weak species. The Nexari have retreated to their underground shelters, Thex reported. Our ground forces are having difficulty reaching them. The tunnels are too narrow for our warriors, and they've collapsed many of the main passages. Vrock's mandibles clicked in annoyance. Then collapse the mountains on top of them. I want this system cleaned out and ready for colonization within 10 cycles. General, interrupted the sensor operator, his voice carrying an odd note of uncertainty. We're detecting multiple hyperspace signatures approaching the system, large ones. Reinforcements from the homeworld? Vrock asked, though he knew none were scheduled. No, sir. The signatures don't match any known Hektari vessel configurations. We're reading 43 ships incoming. They'll drop out of hyperspace in approximately 1 hour. Vrock's eyes narrowed. The Nexari had no allies capable of fielding such a fleet. Most of their neighbors were peaceful trading species with minimal military capabilities. Could it be a Korthax intervention fleet? The sensor operator shook his head. The energy signatures are completely unfamiliar. I've never seen anything like them in our databases. An hour later, space above the 3rd planet of the Nexari system lit up with the distinctive flashes of ships dropping out of hyperspace. But these weren't the sleek organic curves of Korthax vessels or the geometric brutality of other warrior races. These ships looked different, angular and functional, built for efficiency rather than intimidation. They moved with a precision that spoke of experienced crews and advanced tactical coordination. "Unknown vessels, this is General Vrock of the Hektari Collective," he broadcast across all frequencies. "You are interfering in a lawful conquest. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed." The response came from the largest human ship, a voice speaking in accented but understandable galactic standard. "General Vrock, this is Admiral Marcus Webb of the Human Federation Third Fleet. We are here in response to a distress call from the Nexari Federation requesting protection from unprovoked aggression. You have one opportunity to cease all hostile actions and withdraw from Nexari space." Vrock's mandibles clicked in what passed for Hektari laughter. "Humans? I've never heard of your species. Are you another collection of peace-loving weaklings come to die alongside these herbivores?" "We're whatever we need to be," Webb replied. "You have 10 minutes to begin your withdrawal." "Or what?" Vrock challenged. "Or we'll remove you ourselves." The audacity of the statement stunned Vrock into momentary silence. His fleet consisted of 8 dreadnoughts, 15 heavy cruisers, and dozens of support vessels. Over 60 ships total, all crewed by experienced Hektari warriors. These unknown humans had appeared with fewer ships and were making demands as if they held the superior position. "You're outnumbered," Vrock finally said. "We're aware," Webb replied calmly. 9 minutes. Vrock cut the transmission and turned to his tactical officer. "Analysis? Their ships are approximately half the size of our dreadnoughts, but they're carrying significantly more weapons than should be possible for their mass. Their power signatures suggest extremely efficient reactor designs. And, sir," the officer paused, manipulating his displays, "they're not deploying in any formation I recognize. It's almost like they're planning to fight us one-on-one." "Impossible. No species is that arrogant." But even as Vrock said it, he felt a strange unease. These humans had appeared with military precision, spoken with absolute confidence, and showed no signs of being intimidated by Hektari superiority. The 10 minutes expired. "All ships attack formation," Webb's voice came across the open channel. "Rules of engagement are weapons free on all hostile vessels. Priority targets are ships engaged in planetary bombardment. Watch your backgrounds. There are civilians down there." What happened next defied everything the Hektari understood about space combat. The human ships didn't advance in the traditional formation, shields forward and weapons charging. Instead, they scattered like seeds in the wind, moving in seemingly random directions at velocities that should have torn apart any known hull design. Their weapons began firing before they were even in what the Hektari considered optimal range. But these weren't the energy beams or plasma bolts common to most galactic civilizations. These were solid projectiles, chunks of metal accelerated to significant fractions of light speed. The humans called them kinetic kill vehicles, and they struck with the force of tactical nuclear weapons. The first Hektari cruiser to die never even realized it was under attack. A tungsten rod the size of a telephone pole, accelerated to 15% of light speed, punched through its shields as if they weren't there, and vaporized the entire forward section of the ship. "Impossible!" Vrock roared. "Nothing can penetrate Hektari battle screens." "General," his tactical officer reported, his voice shaking, "their projectiles aren't energy-based. Our shields are designed to deflect energy weapons. These solid objects are just passing through." A second cruiser died, then a third. The human ships moved like predators, never staying in one position long enough for the Hektari weapons to lock on. They seemed to anticipate every movement, every tactical decision, as if they'd studied Hektari combat doctrine for centuries. Commander Thex was studying the tactical display with growing horror. "Sir, they're not fighting like any species we've encountered. Look at their movement patterns. They're not trying to control space or establish firing lines. They're hunting us." And they were. Each human ship operated with deadly independence, but their actions were coordinated with mechanical precision. They communicated constantly, sharing targeting data and positioning information in real time. When a Hektari ship tried to retreat, 2 or 3 human vessels would already be in position to intercept. When the Hektari attempted to form defensive formations, the humans would strike from unexpected angles, using the planet's gravity, well, and moon system to mask their approaches. Captain Sarah Chen, aboard the destroyer Relentless, exemplified the human approach to combat. Her ship danced between 2 Hektari dreadnoughts, using her superior speed and maneuverability to stay in their blind spots while her railguns methodically dismantled their weapon systems. "Target their sensor arrays," she ordered her weapons officer. "Blind them first, then cut off their legs." "Ma'am," her tactical officer called out, "we're being targeted by 4 enemy ships simultaneously." "Then we'd better be somewhere else when their weapons cycle," Chen replied. "Helm, emergency acceleration. Use the moon's gravity to slingshot us behind that heavy cruiser." The Relentless pulled a maneuver that would have liquefied most alien crews under the G-forces involved, but her human crew simply gritted their teeth and held on. They emerged from behind the moon at an angle no Hektari commander had anticipated, putting them in perfect position to attack the enemy formation's flank. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Human ships that should have been destroyed by concentrated fire would suddenly accelerate in directions that seemed to violate physics or use debris and planetary bodies as cover in ways that required split-second timing and absolute trust in their navigational computers. The Hektari, for all their warrior tradition, fought like most galactic species, methodically, predictably, following established patterns that had served them well against other civilized races. But humans had evolved on a world where predictability meant death. They fought like the apex predators they were, using every advantage their death world had taught them to exploit. "Sir," Commander Thex reported, his voice now edged with something that might have been panic, "we've lost 12 ships. The humans have lost none." Vrock stared at the tactical display in disbelief. In less than 30 minutes of combat, nearly a quarter of his fleet had been destroyed or disabled, while the human ships continued their deadly dance apparently untouched. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "They're smaller than us, fewer in number. By what right do they dominate this battle?" As if in answer to his question, Admiral Webb's voice came across the communication channel. "General Vrock, you're fighting like you're in a duel with rules and honor. We're fighting like our children's lives depend on it. There's a difference." A Hektari dreadnought exploded as multiple kinetic rounds found their mark, and Vrock realized with growing horror that these humans weren't just winning. They were making it look easy. They moved through space like they owned it, struck with precision that spoke of countless hours of practice, and coordinated their attacks with the kind of seamless teamwork that only came from absolute trust in one's comrades. "General," his sensor operator called out urgently, "we're detecting new energy signatures. The humans are launching smaller craft." On the tactical display, swarms of tiny vessels emerged from the human carriers. They were too small to mount serious weapons, barely larger than fighters. But as they streaked toward the Hektari fleet, Vrock noticed something that chilled him to his core. "Those aren't fighters," he said slowly. "Those are boarding craft." The human marines were coming. The boarding pods struck the Hektari dreadnought, Blood of Conquest, like meteors, their armored hulls punching through the ship's outer armor with controlled explosive charges. Inside each pod, a squad of human marines waited in the darkness, their powered armor sealed against vacuum and their weapons ready. Sergeant Maria Santos was the first through the breach in Section 7. Her suit's sensors immediately began mapping the ship's interior, sharing the data with her squad and the tactical network. The Hektari ship's corridors were massive, built for 3-meter-tall warriors, but that just meant more room to maneuver. "Remember," she said to her squad over the comm, We need prisoners for intelligence, but if they're between us and the civilian ships down there, we go through them. The first group of Hektari defenders came around the corner in the traditional formation their species had used for millennia. Shields forward, weapons raised, advancing steadily. It was an effective tactic against most galactic species, who would retreat and establish firing lines. The humans went straight at them. Santos launched herself forward with her suit's jump jets, closing the distance before the Hektari could react. Her combat knife, monomolecular edge glowing, sliced through armor that was supposed to be impenetrable. Behind her, Corporal Davies used his plasma rifle to suppress the other defenders, while Private Chen flanked them using the ceiling-mounted maintenance conduits. The Hektari had never encountered boarding tactics like these. Humans moved in 3 dimensions, used the ship's own structure against its defenders, and fought with a combination of technological advantage and sheer audacity that left the Hektari struggling to respond. "They're everywhere!" one Hektari warrior screamed over their communication network as humans seemed to appear from ventilation shafts, maintenance tunnels, and even the ship's own cargo lifts. On the bridge of the Blood of Conquest, General Vrock watched in horror as red indicators spread across his ship's schematic. Human boarding parties were advancing on all critical systems simultaneously. But it was their approach that truly unsettled him. They weren't just fighting to control the ship. They were fighting to end the threat as quickly as possible. "Sir," Commander Thex reported, his voice tight with strain, "they've captured engineering. Our reactor is operating under human control." "Impossible. No species can master alien technology that quickly." "Sir, they're not mastering it, they're improving it. Our reactor efficiency just increased by 12%. Before Vrock could process that information, the bridge doors exploded inward. Smoke and debris filled the air as human Marines poured through the breach. Their leader, a female with colonel's insignia, stepped forward and removed her helmet, revealing a face marked by what were clearly combat scars. "General Vrock," Colonel Lisa Morrison said calmly, "I'm placing you and your crew under arrest for crimes against sentient beings." Vrock raised his plasma rifle, but the weapon was torn from his grip by some kind of magnetic field generated by the human's armor. Around the bridge, his officers found themselves similarly disarmed, human weapons trained on them with mechanical precision. "This is impossible," Vrock snarled. "You're outnumbered in our own ship." Morrison looked around at the dozen Hektari officers, then at her 4 Marines. "Are we? Corporal Martinez, current status of hostile vessels?" "Ma'am, 14 enemy ships have surrendered. 7 more have been disabled. 3 are still attempting to flee, but Captain Chen's destroyer group is in pursuit." Morrison turned back to Vrock. "General, your fleet is finished. Your choice now is whether your crews live to face justice or die pointlessly in vacuum." What Vrock couldn't understand was how completely his forces had been outmatched. The Hektari Collective had conquered dozens of systems, defeated warrior species that had fought for thousands of years. But these humans had dismantled his fleet in less than 2 hours, and done it while taking minimal casualties themselves. The answer lay in how differently the 2 species approached warfare. The Hektari fought for glory, for conquest, for the honor of their collective. They followed ancient traditions and established tactics that had served their ancestors well. Humans fought for survival. Every technique they used, every strategy they employed, had been refined in the crucible of their death world and perfected in countless conflicts against their own kind. They didn't fight for honor, they fought to win, quickly and decisively, so they could go home to their families. While the space battle concluded, Admiral Webb was already coordinating relief efforts for the Nexari survivors. Human medical teams were being deployed to the planet's surface, their advanced trauma care and surgical techniques already saving lives that would have been lost to Hektari bombardment. Dr. Amanda Foster was among the first medical personnel to reach the underground shelters where the Nexari had hidden. What she found broke her heart. Thousands of injured civilians, many of them children, with wounds from energy weapons and falling debris. "We need surgical suites set up immediately," she radioed to the field hospital team. "And get me every emergency medical kit we have. These people have been without proper medical care for days." The Nexari themselves were unlike any species the humans had encountered. They stood roughly human height, but were more delicate in build, with pale green skin and large, expressive eyes. They moved with a natural grace that spoke of their peaceful nature, and when they looked at the human medical personnel, it was with a mixture of hope and lingering fear. A young Nexari female, barely old enough to be considered adult by her species' standards, approached Dr. Foster with obvious terror. She had witnessed the humans' arrival, seen their ships destroy the Hectari fleet with ruthless efficiency, and didn't know what to expect from these new strangers. "Please," she whispered in broken Galactic Standard. "We have no weapons. We cannot fight. Please don't hurt us." Dr. Foster knelt down to the Nexari's eye level, her voice gentle. "We're not here to hurt anyone. We're doctors. We came to help." She gestured to the medical equipment being set up around them. "My name is Amanda. What's yours?" "Lysa," the young Nexari replied hesitantly. "Well, Lysa, could you help me understand your people's physiology? I want to make sure we treat your injured properly." For the next several hours, Dr. Foster and her team worked alongside Nexari healers, sharing medical knowledge and saving lives. The humans' advanced surgical techniques, combined with Nexari understanding of their own biology, proved incredibly effective. Patients who would have died from their injuries were stabilized and began recovering. But it was the attitude of the human medical personnel that truly amazed the Nexari. These were members of the same species that had just destroyed an entire invasion fleet with casual efficiency. Yet they worked with infinite patience, treating each injured civilian with the same care they would give their own families. Lieutenant Tom Bradley, a human Marine, was helping evacuate injured Nexari from a collapsed shelter when one of the survivors grabbed his arm. "Why?" the elderly Nexari asked. "Why did you come? We are not your people. Our worlds have nothing you need. Why did you risk your lives for us?" Bradley paused in his work, considering the question. Finally, he said simply, "Because you asked for help. That's all?" "That's everything," Bradley replied. "Where we come from, when someone calls for help, you answer. Doesn't matter who they are or what's in it for you. It's just what you do." The Nexari elder stared at him for a long moment, then said something in his native language that Bradley's translator couldn't parse. Later, he would learn it was a phrase that meant, "The gods have sent us angels with warriors' hearts." Back on Kepler Station, Ambassador Zillith was receiving reports from the battle with growing amazement. The human fleet had not only defeated the Hectari invasion, they had done so without losing a single ship. More importantly, they had immediately begun humanitarian operations, providing medical aid, food, and temporary shelter to the Nexari survivors. "This is unprecedented," she said to Corvin. "A warrior species that fights to protect others, then stays to heal the wounded. I've never seen anything like it in galactic history." Corvin was monitoring the human fleet communications, trying to understand these strange beings better. "Ambassador, they're not requesting payment for their services. In fact, they're refusing offers of compensation from the Nexari government. One of their commanders said, and I quote, 'We didn't come here for profit. We came because it was the right thing to do.'" 3 days later, Admiral Webb stood in the Nexari capital's main plaza, accepting the gratitude of a species his people had never met before. The Nexari had insisted on a ceremony to honor their rescuers, though the humans seemed uncomfortable with the attention. "We will never forget what you've done for us," said Prime Minister Keth of the Nexari Federation. "You came when no one else would. You fought when we could not. You saved our children when we had lost hope." Webb, never comfortable with speeches, kept his response simple. "We did what anyone should have done. We're just glad we could help." But as he looked out at the crowd of surviving Nexari, families reunited, children playing again, healers tending to the wounded, he knew they had done more than just win a battle. They had shown the galaxy what humans were truly capable of when they fought not for conquest or glory, but for the simple belief that innocent people deserved to live free from fear. The Hectari survivors were processed according to galactic law, their war crimes documented and their future decided by interspecies tribunal. But even in defeat, General Vrock couldn't understand what he had encountered. "What manner of species are you?" he asked Admiral Webb during his interrogation. "You fight like demons, yet heal like angels. You show mercy to your enemies, yet destroy them without hesitation when they threaten others. I have conquered 17 systems, faced dozens of warrior species, but I have never encountered anything like humans." Webb considered the question carefully before answering. "We're survivors, General. Our world taught us that sometimes you have to fight to protect what matters, but it also taught us that survival without compassion isn't really living." As the human fleet prepared to depart Nexari space, they left behind more than just grateful allies. They had established the first human embassy in the outer spiral, opened trade negotiations that would benefit both species, and created a template for how advanced civilizations should respond to humanitarian crises. But perhaps most importantly, they had sent a message that would spread throughout the galaxy. Earth's children were no longer an unknown species on the galactic rim. They were protectors, healers, and when necessary, warriors who would cross the void to defend those who could not defend themselves. The plea for help had indeed reached the wrong ears, wrong if you were counting on the galaxy's indifference to injustice. But for the Nexari, and for countless other species who would someday call out in desperation, it had reached exactly the right ones. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy, and the galaxy would never be the same.